Hello friends, welcome back to the next session on production, planning, operations, scheduling and control. Now let's begin with our learning. Today, in this particular session, we'll be able to understand and deal with the concept of facility preparedness assessment. So, what is the assessment that is needed to be undertaken with respect to the facilities planning? At the end of this particular session, the learners will be able to understand what do we mean by the facility preparedness assessment, what is the importance of facility preparedness assessment in the organization, and the various components along with the activities that will be undertaken in the organization for facility preparedness assessment. Now let's begin with our learning. The first initial understanding will deal with the concept of facility preparedness assessment. Now, the facilities planning or a plant layout is of a certain concern, wherein at every stage the company or the organization has to identify what are the various factors or what are the various subcomponents that needs to be assessed while preparing a plant layout. So when a manufacturing plant is being prepared, all the various factors with respect to the connectivity, with respect to the transportation, with respect to the labor, the number of customers, the availability of goods and services, the utility as to aids to trade, all these factors needs to be taken into account. And when all those factors have been considered in a positive way, then we can say that an optimal site is been selected for a manufacturing unit. And hence, a provision or availability of all amenities at a particular manufacturing layout is the consideration of facility preparedness assessment. The concept of facility preparedness assessment is based on various important variables which are of commercial nature. Now, when we say that it is of a commercial nature, because it involves the cost into those particular perspectives. Now, let's take an example, that is water as a particular resource. Water is an essential resource which has been required at every plant layout or a certain plant that we are manufacturing or a manufacturing unit. Now here, in this case, if you want to purchase a water or if water is been required, you get it either dig or which has been extracted from the earth or you need to purchase it from the government. Now, when we are purchasing from a certain government, we need to pay the water bill or the electricity bill and so on. So for those particular concern, the bill that is being paid by the organization for the utilization or usage of resources is the factor that has been associated with the commercial purpose. The usage of electricity, the usage of telephone as a factor, the usage of various transportation factors with respect to the road, rail or any other concern, all those factors needs to be assessed and accordingly the competitive advantage needs to be identified or assessed. The competitive advantage with respect to the availability of goods and services at the optimal rate, not at a certain concern, that is a shortage that can be created in the long-term perspective. All those factors needs to be assessed and then a rational decision as to whether the plant decision or the implementation of plant should be undertaken or not needs to be identified. And hence, all those factors forms the components of facility preparedness assessment. Now, and this particular concern, when this activity of facility decision is being undertaken, one has to see that the long-term objectives or goals of the organization are being achieved. That is, ultimately, we are aiming to provide the good qualitative product to the customers or the consumers who are being happy and satisfied in the long run. So, delighting the customers with the qualitative product which can be offered along with the achievement of the long-term goal with respect to either profit maximization or wealth maximization is needed to be achieved. And for those particular concern, the goods or services, that is the products that we are manufacturing, plays a very significant role. And for effective manufacturing of those particular products, there should be an effective facility preparedness assessment that has been taken by the organization. And hence, the facility preparedness assessment is a critical process that can be undertaken for a company which needs to be developed at the strategic level and which needs to be centered as a part of a manufacturing unit. So, unless and until all the facilities are being provided for a particular individual or a manufacturing plant, we cannot say that a plant can be run very effectively and can run very smoothly. Now, what is an understanding or the background of the facility preparedness assessment? The facility preparedness assessment focuses on the concept of locational as a major factor. The location of a particular plant or a manufacturing unit plays a significant role with respect to the connectivity, availability of raw materials, availability of skilled personnel, the movement or shipment of goods and services from one place to another place, the availability of equipment as the major perspectives, and so on. And hence, At every stage, one needs to identify the availability of resources at the manufacturing stage. When all those factors have been taken together into a certain account, then we can come to a conclusion that a plant may be called as an effective or with a certain drawback. The location being one of the major factor or the components of the plant layout, it needs to be determined and to be seen that the success of a manufacturing depends on a plant layout which can be executed or which can be identified. Now, in a crucial stage of a strategic decision making, one should be very confident and be very comfortable with respect to the facilities that are available for a certain plant. The facilities that are available at a certain plant depends on the availability of resources within the circle or within the radius of that particular plant. The competition, the cost, the related impacts on the factors of production, and so on. The availability of land, labor, capital, enterprise, and resources also plays a significant and an important role in identifying about how those resources will be utilized, the availability of those particular resources over a period of time, that is maybe it of 5 years or the 10 years or the 20 years, or for the long term period that is more than 20 years. So for all those particular factors, the assessment needs to be undertaken, and then only we can say that a plant location is very effective and can be fruitful to the organization in the long run. And hence, assessment of all those particular factors of the plant with respect to the facility availability is called the facility assessment planning. Now let's look at the various location selection factors which needs to be undertaken. Number one is the industrialization. The concept of industrialization is applicable only to a certain concern wherein if you are looking for a manufacturing unit of a long-term perspective, then accordingly, simultaneously there should be a surrounding of industries in the particular area because it develops a culture or a certain habit for the long-term benefit of the organization. And hence, if there is a industrialization in the particular area or a particular scenario, then it supports or it motivates the other people to undertake the industrial activity or the manufacturing activity at the very speedy stage. Errors in location selection. There are certain factors in which your decision of selecting a particular location may go wrong or may go in a vain. So for those particular concerns, while selecting a location for a plant layout, that is for a manufacturing unit, the decision should be very wisely taken and accordingly, various errors in plant location selection should be avoided or should be minimized. And lastly, the location strategy. The location strategy with respect to the availability of number of consumers, connectivity or proximity to the market, the various government norms with respect to the either the state government or the central government, the availability of resources as to factors of production and so on. All those factors needs to be taken into account and then only the location strategy should be undertaken. The major factor here that impacts is the availability of land. And accordingly, with respect to the availability of land, the cost of land also plays an important role. Wherein, in terms of industrialization, when we try to see that a certain amount of machinery or a certain technology needs to be imported or needs to be shifted, then accordingly, there should be a supportive or conducive culture that has been supporting in the industry, and only then such technology can be implemented. Now let's understand what are the various factors that influence the facility's location. Number one, the customer proximity. The customer or the market proximity deals with a certain factors or the consideration with respect to how it has been connected to the market. So connectivity to the market is essentially required, and unless and until there is no customer or the market to a certain product, there is no connectivity to a certain location as a certain factor, the plant location decision goes in a wrong concern, and hence it can be seen that your investment that you have made may go either as a part of an waste as a certain perspective. So customer proximity or current connectivity to the customer or the market is essentially required. The business area. The business area is the industrialization area that we are looking for or that we are covering. So a simultaneous area with respect to the availability of resources, culture that has been ruling or prevailing into the market, all those factors are needed to be taken into account, and hence based on those particular factors, the decision as to conduction of the business activity needs to be undertaken. Availability of skilled or unskilled labor. The labor is the major component or the factors of production which needs to be identified while selecting a plant layout or a certain location, and accordingly, if the labor is available in a sufficient or an abundant quantity, then only the manufacturing activity can be done in a very effective way. If the labor is not available in a very effective way, then accordingly the production process may get hampered over a period of time. The consent with respect to the free trade zone area or the agreements. There are certain norms by the government which restricts for conduction of certain operational activities in a certain zones or in a certain area. May it be called an MIDC area, may it be called as a free trade zone, maybe it called as an EPZ or so on. So the various agreements that have been formed with either the state government or the central government, the norms that are there at the international or the national or the global level, all those factors affect the facilities location of a certain product offer or of a manufacturing unit. The next part or the factors that influences the facility location is the number of suppliers. So availability of supplies as to raw material, as to the availability of goods and services, that is the factors of production, also needs to be taken into account or into consideration. So the factor as to supplier, that is the raw material that is an essential component of the business organization, should be taken into account, and there should be a proper connectivity of channel between the manufacturer and the supplier. The environment policy. Now, with respect to the environment policy of the government should be very stable. It should be quite acceptable, and accordingly, we should see that the facility or the plant that we are locating or we are trying to establish should not harm any component of the environment. Environment being the major component as a part of an nature, as a part of an concern, we need to see that there is no harm or a damage caused to the environment, and hence the environmental policy of the government need not to be hampered or it need not to be affected. Now let's understand what are the facility layout objectives. Number one, the more offer the to offer the most efficient area for organizing equipment and facilitating the circulation of commodity as well as establishing a safe and comfortable working environment. So the facility or the plant layout focuses on providing the organized equipment. That is, how do you plan a production activity in order to see that whatever activity that has been conducted in the manufacturing unit is of a well coordinated way, and whatever circulation of commodity that has been undertaken, it produces finished goods of a qualitative nature which is comfortable for the working environment in the organization. And hence the facility layout is having a certain objective to see that whatever facility that you are providing in a plant layout are as per the terms and norms that have been provided by the government, and it is quite effective as per the need and requirement of the hour. Establishing the order in production in order to achieve a particular goal. So whatever goal that has been set by the organization with respect to the strategic goal, the business goal, the long-term or the production short-term goals and so on, all those goals of the organization should be achieved in a specified time period, that is a specified deadline, and accordingly the production activity needs to be done in a very effective way. There should not be any idle time in the particular machine, and all those activities that have been needed to be conducted in a manufacturing unit does not have a certain impact on either a plant layout or the plant facilities that are available in the surrounding area. The decrease of the workforce, the availability of the raw material, and the equipment migration from one department to another department or from one location to another location should not affect the functioning of a certain organization. And hence, the facility layout objective with respect to availability of all those factors and the free or smooth flow of goods and services from one place to another place needs to be undertaken in a very effective way. Safety for the employees. Now here, as a part of a labor which is of a skilled or an unskilled nature, we have to take an essential care or a cause with respect to the safety of laborers or the employees in the organization. So when we ensure that plant is been established, the laborers that have been established or located in a particular plant should be feeling very quite safe, and various safety measures or technique needs to be implemented. And in order to see that, we need to expand or adjust the layout. It is necessary to see that the production line that has been established or whatever technology that we are using, they are quite comfortable and affordable to the organization, and the environment with respect to the people, with respect to the employees, with respect to the capital is also quite supportive and acceptable by all the ventures. And hence the facility layout objective has to consider both, that is the internal factors as well as the external factors of the organization. And lastly, increasing the organizational manufacturing capability. So overall manufacturing capability of the organization should be increased in the long run so as to see that the demand that has been there into the market is also being satisfied with the supply of product into the market. Now let's understand what are the various factors associated with the designing of plant layout. The factors that have been associated with the designing of plant layout are the flexibility, the space utilization, and the capital. Flexibility as to the movement of goods and services from one location to another location, one department to another department, one machine or assembly line to another assembly line. The space utilization as to conduction of all the manufacturing activities within the specified time period or within the specified time or within the specified layout or the availability of land for the manufacturing unit. And lastly, the availability of capital. Capital as to the short-term capital or the long-term capital, the day-to-day need or requirement of working capital, and how the investment of the long-term perspective or avenue is needed to be undertaken. So those are the factors of plant layout with respect to the designing. Now let's understand what are the different types of facility layout. The different types of facility layout may be either a line layout, a functional layout, a fixed position layout, a cellular technology layout, or a combined layout. Another objective or a combination of the layout may be a computerized relative allocation of facility technique. In terms of the line layout, a series of activities is being undertaken and accordingly the goods are being passing from one level to another level. In terms of the functional layout, it keeps on moving based on its respective function. That is, depending on the potential, depending on the skill, depending on the ability, and depending on what function has to be performed on a certain product. Fixed position layout, wherein the machinery and the product is being fixed at a certain location and only the movement of goods and services from a random position is being undertaken. Cellular technology, that is based on a certain technology, based on a certain command that has been given by a certain product, the movement of goods and services is being undertaken. The combined layout may be either the combination of any of the combination with respect to either the line, the functional, and the fixed position or the cellular. And lastly, the computerized relative allocation. Computerized relative allocation is related with the robotics technology that has been implemented in the today's era or the scenario, wherein in terms of the labor, that is the skilled or unskilled labor, the various robots have been deployed, they have been deputed at a certain location, and accordingly the activity of human beings are being controlled or conducted with the help of robots that are being used. Now let's understand the various design layout techniques. The various design layout techniques may be either a 2 or 3 dimensional templates, a sequence analysis, or a line balancing. In terms of 2 or 3 dimensional templates, the various series of activities are divided either into only 2 or 3 dimensions only and not more than that. In terms of sequencing analysis, a proper series or sequence of analysis with respect to either forward integration or backward integration is being undertaken, and accordingly all those activities are being performed. In terms of a line balancing, there is a line layout into existence, and based on the line balancing, each and every activity is been deputed a certain time and the goods have been passed from one location to another location for the respective conclusion. So in a certain concern, we can conclude or summarize that a business can achieve the aforementioned goal by assuring the following things. Those particular following things may be better training for workers and managers. So there should be an effective training to the workers and managers so as to see that whatever activities that have been conducted in the business organization are in supportive to the plant layout or the facility preparedness assessment, and accordingly all those facilities are being provided in the organization. Raising the knowledge of the health hazard and safety requirement. So safety within the manufacturing unit and outside the manufacturing unit is needed to be taken into consideration, and accordingly the plant layout should be designed in an effective way. Safety requirements with respect to the natural and environmental conditions of the nature also needs to be taken into account. And lastly, the manpower, optimum manpower and equipment utilization always needs to be undertaken so as to see that all the resources that have been employed or they have been used are effectively used and they are being effectively utilized. The empowering people and minimizing administrative and other indirect work. So each and every individual participants of the manufacturing chain should be employed or should be utilized in a better effective way, and the administrative activities should be controlled in a certain minimal level. And hence we can say that there is an optimal or perfect solution or a planning of facility preparedness assessment that has been undertaken. Now let's summarize what we have learned in this particular session. In this particular session, we have learned the concept of what do we mean by the facility preparedness assessment, how facility preparedness assessment is being undertaken, what are the various activities that have been undertaken in terms of the facility preparedness assessment and how the activities that have been conducted in facility preparedness assessment can be connected or interlinked with respect to various activities that can be implemented in the organization, either related to the plant layout or the machine layout or the location layout. I hope you must have enjoyed the learning at this particular stage. Thank you.